Hello, and welcome to this week's Greet the Week. Good to be back with you. We were off the air for a couple of weeks, but thank you for being here and watching now or later. Today, Jan has chosen our topic, and she's talking about, well, kind of like flip-flopping, that whenever we're having the struggles that we're climbing up the mountain, and then sometimes when it's easy, it's like we're sliding down, and do we lose our conscience? Do we lose our thoughts? Jan, what's your thinking today? What are we going to delve into?
Well, I just want you to know that I didn't totally ignore or forget about Greet the Week while I was on my vacation, because we were doing some hiking in the Smoky Mountains, and we're going up the mountain and down the mountain, and I was thinking, this would be a great topic for Greet the Week, because when you go up a mountain, and these weren't big tall mountains, they're kind of small mountains. It's a struggle to go up, but it's not insurmountable, and you keep going. And we have so many metaphors about uphill battle, and how terrible it is, all the challenges we have, and all the stuff that we face in our lives. But then when I'm going down the mountain, my knees are hurting. You're kind of unsteady. It's a little more difficult to go down because you've got that gravity pulling on you. And I started thinking about metaphors about going downhill. And I was thinking, well, we call it, if a person is going downhill, that normally is a negative thing, that things aren't going well for that person. It's getting worse and worse. Or sometimes we'll say it's a downhill slide, or we're on the downhill now, meaning that we've gotten over the bad part, we've got the good part coming up. And so I was just thinking about how we started looking at uphill versus downhill, because when I'm hiking, I really prefer going uphill better because it's less stress on me physically, on my knees and everything. But going downhill, oh my goodness, it's kind of a struggle as I'm aging here. And so I just thought I'd open up the discussion that way and see what people had.
Well, did you come to any conclusions?
Well, I come to the conclusion that, even though going uphill is a struggle, you do feel good about yourself once you get to your destination. When you get up to the top, you feel like, okay, I did it. I made it. I was able to do it. And I think we appreciate things in general when we have to struggle for it. If things are too easy, if everything's, and then another part on this trip, we did a bike ride that followed an old railroad, and it was all downhill. And so it was a very low grade. So you weren't, going real fast downhill, but I never had to pedal. And I was thinking, well, this is just too easy. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable, because there were no parts of it, absolutely no parts of it, where I had to pedal hard to get up the hill. And so I really started thinking about how those are gifts in our lives, to have those struggles for us to go through, because once you get through them, you have something to be proud of.
It seems like we're growing when we're going uphill.
Yes.
Because we're developing, we're learning something new. But going downhill, we're enjoying life. We're not having to concentrate or grow. We're relaxed going downhill.
So I guess that says something about me, that I don't like just being relaxed. Huh? I want to be doing something.
You want to keep growing all the time, huh?
I do. I do.
Well, the thing of it is that everything has so many, it's not just black and white. There are so many nuances to it. There's so many ways to look at something and to see it. The thing of it is a little chicken coming out of the egg. If you try to break it apart, because it's, breaking it from the inside and trying to get out, if you open that egg for it to help release it from its captivity, it's going to die.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's not developing that muscle in which to get out.
Yeah.
And so it is those struggles that really can make us strong, and they do contribute to making us strong. Not only our muscles, but our psychological muscles and compassion muscles and all kinds of muscles that it's working.
That's interesting about the chicken. Have you actually ever done that?
No, I haven't. Because
I have. We do. I remember when I was in grade school, somebody had chickens and they brought the eggs into the classroom with the incubator. And you started seeing the chicks, cracking the eggs and getting out. And a few of the kids tried breaking open some of the eggs, and the chicks did not live. I mean, that made an impression on me, for how many years ago that was, about you don't help the chickens out of the eggs. You let them work their way out of it.
Well, as a kid growing up, we had a chicken farm, and knew right up front. I mean, I guess generations before had learned that and passed it on to me. No, don't help them struggle, because it's that struggle that makes them strong and helps them to get out and the same is true with the butterfly.
Right.
When it's coming out, it takes a while for those wings to dry and to develop that muscle as it's coming out of the cocoon. And so the same thing with us. It takes us some struggle and some difficulties for us to try a little bit and then to rest and rejuvenate. That's just like whenever we set goals or anything like that, whether it's a more difficult goal or a simple goal, we have to kind of grow into it. So and a lot of times we just go into something like even exercising an 11-mile bike ride. Did that give you some muscles aching the next day that you were not aware of previously?
No, it didn't. I mean, I'm in fairly decent shape because of all the walking that I do. And we didn't, the uphills weren't that bad uphill. I was able to go just fine on the uphills. and when I finished that, I was like, that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. So no, but if there have been more hills, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So with humans, how do you decide whether to help them with a struggle or not help them with a struggle?
That's a great question.
Human children, I'm talking children now, mostly.
I mean, I think
evidently sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
I think most of the time it's good, though, to let the kids struggle, knowing that you're there with them along the way, but keep encouraging them. Instead of taking care of things for them, because I think so many parents jump in way too early to help a kid out, because when we see our children suffering, that creates more pain in us than it does for them. That's my theory anyway.
In helping children learn and in teaching parents and so forth, I like to help them learn to play along and then play up and then play down. And so you're playing along, we're stacking blocks, okay? And so the kid can stack 2 blocks but doesn't know how to stack 4 or 5, and they get frustrated trying to stack a 4th block up there. And so the parent comes along and, shows them how, with a little skill, kind of how to do it, and then projects onto them, well, whenever you develop your agility muscles a little bit more, you'll be able to do this. Or maybe you do something else that you make a bridge and put it across. But here's something else that can be done, so that they can widen their perspective of how to do something. And then you go back to where it was and give it back to them, because they have learned something in the process, whether they realize it or not. Anytime we can see something different, it has widened our scope of seeing.
Yeah.
And so there's helping without helping. There's encouragement without, of course, you never know how someone's going to take something.
Right.
And that has to be kind of factored into all of the what ifs, is because we can never see what we see. It can never be from what the other person's point of view is.
Yeah, you're talking about that reminded me of something that happened with my daughter. And I don't know if I've mentioned this in here before, but when she was in 1st or 2nd grade, when they were learning how to spell their spelling words, and then every week the teacher would give them 3 or 4 challenge words that were a lot bigger than the regular spelling word. And my daughter's dyslexic, and she had a hard enough time learning how to spell the regular words, but that didn't keep her from answering the challenge words on the test. And so the teacher would give the spelling test. She'd do pretty well on the words that she had to learn, but the challenge words, they were not even close. And one time, the teacher wrote on her paper that don't even try the challenge words. These are too difficult for you. And I asked my daughter, I said, does it bother you that you're getting these wrong? And she didn't even really care that she got them wrong. So I sent a note back to the teacher, and I said, please don't discourage my child from trying something that's a little difficult for her. I will start working with her on the challenge words, and we'll work forward. And the teacher apologized for doing that. But then after that, my daughter and I, we worked on the challenge words, and she started getting those right too. And so, she was up for the struggle, but she was oblivious. I mean, it didn't bother her at all that they were marked, every one of them was marked wrong. The teacher was feeling worse for her than she was, but basically told her just give up. And I'm going, now wait a minute. Let's give her a chance. She wasn't even trying.
Right. Yeah.
And I think so many times we'll do that. We'll discourage kids from doing something because we think it's too difficult, but because we're afraid that they're going to feel bad if they fail. But that's all part of growing up too, is to learn how to fail, and then decide whether you want to pick yourself up and keep going or not. And
do it graciously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to self-evaluate, I bet I could learn it. What if I could? At least I can try it, as well as along with some encouragement. But yeah, the way we see things is just always so different from how someone else sees it. And back to building those muscles, sometimes we will delve into something thinking, well, I can do this. If so-and-so did it, I can do it. Or, I'm just that I can do it anyway. And we'll give everything to it, and then we're absolutely exhausted, as in muscles, and you're so sore the next day you can't move. And so it's going into it a little at a time rather than full force, and kind of growing into it as we develop those muscles of learning, those muscles of graciously not getting something correct. As we develop all of those muscles, then we can become more apt at overcoming, at seeing where we have messed up, and being willing to always look at it. I read something the other day that I'm still thinking about, but I'm going to toss it out because it's so contradictory. But then it says that you really cannot judge anything. I mean, this is not exactly but the meaning that I retrieved from it is that you cannot make any kind of a judgment without a little flavor of self-deception. You cannot judge another without some self-deception.
I don't understand that at all.
So do you have an example?
Well, the thing I was thinking about is if you judge someone else as to if they're not trying, they're trying too hard, they can't do it, whatever, you can't judge them without deceiving yourself, because we just don't know. And so there's an element of self-deception. When we get enough self-deception there, then it's my way or my way.
Yeah.
As you were talking before, and of course, my apologies for being late. I just couldn't find all the stuff. But anyway, I was reminding me of a number of years ago. I remember learning from Kathy Curtis that we think of learning as, and I'm going to use my hands, like as here's something to learn, and it just does this, like it just goes right up, so you've got something and you're going to work on it. And so we delude kids and we delude ourselves. Actually, there's a self-deception, Mona.
Right.
That learning really is this, and things go down and things go, so that whole idea of resilience comes from that because we don't allow ourselves to believe that we're entitled to we're supposed to make mistakes. You know, it's part of the learning process. So that always struck me as something really interesting from Kathy, you know, that really helping kids to understand and helping all of us to understand that learning will look like that. It's a very up and down.
And sometimes we learn more from the mistakes we make than we do from getting everything right.
Well, as long as
you get it right, then you forget it.
Yeah, as long as it's correct. Because if not, we just keep doing it wrong.
Right.
You know, what do you do when it's actually working and you can get it to keep working?
Yeah, because I've noticed when I would guess at an answer and you guess correctly, I don't retain it near as well as if I guessed incorrectly and then go back and say, oh, it should have been this other thing. Then I'll remember it.
Yeah. Well, the up and the down, I heard this little story the other day I thought was rather amusing, but it's also kind of sad. We'll talk about it. It's kind of like the up and the down, the uphill slide and the downhill. You know, anyway, there was a individual that was a big fan of basketball, and he had his special team, and the team had a history of being, you know, a really good team that was on a losing streak, and had been on a losing streak for quite some time. But anyway, the man continued to be a faithful adherent to his basketball team, and he was even a big supporter financially. And so anyway, they kept, you know, disappointing him. So the gentleman, the person that I'm talking about, had some kind of a disease, and he was getting close to death. And he wrote a letter to the owner of the basketball team, and he told him of his impending death and that he would really request, you know, I've been a good fan, I've been a large contributor, I would really request that you send 8 of your players to be my pallbearers.
Aw.
I would like to give them one more chance to let me down.
Aw.
Yeah, I found that amusing.
Oh, no.
I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. And at the same time, I found it very sad.
Yes.
Very, very sad. And so, in looking at all of these opposites, uphill, downhill, they're both a challenge, just in a different way. And the fact that, you know, I cannot give anything I have not received. And we hear all the time, it's better to give than it is to receive. And yet, if I don't receive, I don't have the ability to give. And so it's the uphill struggle, the downhill struggle. It just depends on how we see it and how we're looking at it. And it's developing a muscle whichever way we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Because we cannot give what we have not received. That's in anything. That's in love, that's in joy, that's in learning to overcome the difficulties in life. That is in anything. We cannot give what we haven't personally received.
So does that mean what we haven't personally experienced? If we haven't experienced love, if we haven't experienced disappointment, then we don't know enough about it to give it?
Yeah. We've seen the hurt and to know, you know, of course, sometimes then we get like that guy, I'm going to give you one more chance to let me down.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes so negative that everything, that's the pattern that it has taken. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, our mind is so, I mean, it can tell us something, it can deceive us really easily.
Yeah.
You know, mind over matter, well, there is a truth to that, but it's not an absolute. Because there are times frequently, and I am really working hard at changing my mind, and you know, things just don't line up all the time. And so everything we go through is a learning experience if we'll just realize that.
Oh my, bless you.
Yeah, we just need to be open to the lessons that are out there, and think about, what's happening and what's going on.
Right.
Not look at it as a negative and then say, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore. Is to try to look at it from a different perspective as, what can I learn from this? What is this telling me? What is the message I'm supposed to get from whatever this thing is that happened to me?
Well, but again, some of that, if you go, just go to the chart and the idea that what are the things that are coming through the filters? Are there things that we don't know? Are there things that never make their way in because we don't know it at all?
Right.
We don't
Right.
even know that it's there, and it's something that's of value because we have no idea what it is.
Mhm.
Do we value it? And then are there things that, I don't pay any attention to that. I don't care.
Until something happens that all of a sudden you do care.
Right? And all of a sudden you do care. Oh, I remember they said, oh.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, looking at history, there are so many things that are changing now that was always into effect, but we just didn't know about them. Like the law of gravity. It was always there.
Right. Yeah.
And then once we begin to learn about them and the different dimensions, there's another dimension to this life that we're just not aware of. And although we have that filter, and yes, it comes in, and there are some things that those senses pick up on, there are so many things that we know that we don't know we know.
Yeah.
And, it's come from somewhere. We've received it somehow, some way, even if we were trying to block it out. Somehow it's seeping through the skin by osmosis.
Well, it's there. Your brain has taken it in, but you just weren't ready to receive the information at the time until this other thing happens, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now that's why you said this.
And sometimes we can put those pieces together, and sometimes we can't.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting. I don't know if you saw 60 Minutes last night.
Mm-mm.
But on 60 Minutes last night, they had a scientist who's an ecological, environmental scientist, like living in Siberia. And he's been watching the permafrost. And so he's been watching the permafrost change for years and years and years. And so he's been writing about it for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
that the permafrost has been changing,
Mm-hmm.
and be aware the permafrost has been changing. And now, because now suddenly people are looking much more at the climate changing,
Right.
now all of a sudden nobody would publish his articles. Now he's got like 18 articles published simultaneously.
Right.
He's doing this for years and years, but now suddenly it's important.
Right.
And now he's kind of going, okay, well, good that you're taking it now, but it may be too late.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So all of a sudden it was always there, at least for him. But it just struck me as interesting.
Yeah. The world is flat, and then it's
Right.
not.
Right.
We're always learning more things, and there's so much more that there is to learn that's already been learned, like the man with the permafrost.
And you have to be ready to receive the information. I know it's very frustrating. Even with Dr. Glasser and his work, he was way ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people wouldn't listen to him, or you didn't pay attention to what he had to say early on. But so many things that you read these days, he was so spot on. They're so in line with what he was saying, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But because people just it has to be at the right time in the right place. Or have good marketing, which we don't have good marketing, to try to get people to really understand that this is important. You need to know this stuff.
Yeah. So Viktor Frankl and his tragic triad. I still had this out here on my desk. This was something that I covered 2 weeks ago, but it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here. He talked about the fact that whenever things go wrong and you're suffering, and there's nothing you can do about it. As in being in a concentration camp, okay? You know, those things that are happening, and within your power, there's none that you can see. And so he talks about it is that there's three things we can do. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm sorry I brought it up.
You're not finding it. Huh?
It's not jumping out at me here.
We'll have to cover it in another session.
Yeah, right.
Was that an uphill or a downhill experience?
There you go. But you know, going back to the uphill and the downhill, I guess for me, I do enjoy the challenge and the whole thing of going uphill and struggling in life. I mean, I've always been one that faced conflict. I didn't run away from conflict. I would embrace it and move forward with it because there's something in the challenge of doing it. I guess because I've been rewarded enough time from going through it that I do enjoy facing that uphill battle.
You know, we've been talking about uphill and downhill, but we've been ignoring the possibility of level.
Yeah.
What's the metaphor for that? What's that? You're not growing. You're not dying. What are you doing?
Well, sometimes you need level. That you're at a point where you don't want the struggles, and you just want everything to be kind of even keel for a while.
Maybe you're just stable.
Yeah.
Right. It's a stable state.
But can you stay in a stable state for a long time? I think for me, I would get antsy and I'd have to instigate something.
Well, I'm just wondering, I was just talking to Jean Suffield this morning for the, Stuart, my apologies. I am behind the cat. We were just talking about states of learning that we're going to do a brain-based faculty presentation. So we were just talking about it, and Eric Jensen talks about allostatic states, so that there is a point where your stress level, and I don't know if it fits in with what we're talking about, but the stress level is just at the right point. So allostatic state, if you think about it like you're here, and the allostatic state is right in the center. So if it's right in the center, what's going on in between it? And then what happens though is when stress gets raised, it stretches over, and then we start to think that that's okay. So maybe you start going uphill a bit and you say, okay, well, I've been supported enough. So it's probably not ever standing still very long because conditions change.
Right.
You know, environment changes. Even to the fact, you know, you're hungry, you're thirsty, you have to go to the bathroom, like, you know, anything happens, right? You know, the phone is ringing and, you know, it's somebody you want to talk to, or, you know, something. So conditions change. So I think there probably isn't that real static, stable point, but there probably is like a level of this, or maybe this way.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, the pleasure-pain syndrome, that we're either trying to avoid pain and trying to find pleasure. But as we bring those two together, we think that we may be searching for happiness, but what we're trying to do is find happiness. Mm-hmm. Find it. And so that we can keep it and bring it into the middle ground where we're living. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, it will never be static. We're not static individuals. We're always changing.
Yeah. From
the micro to the macro, but even in those little micros, as you were talking about, the hunger, the thirst, the blink your eyes, you know, those little things that we never stay static.
Yeah.
having a more comfortable box that we can live in.
But I wonder if they're stable, you know, if there's a point where there's just a stability, you know what you can expect, you know what you can predict, you know pretty much what will happen. You know, like, you know, what it's interesting because it is almost what we value and what we think about things. So, I mean, Jan, you and I, like, we don't have the same view of consensus. You know, like I have the view that says, have faith. I promise you it'll work. It'll work. I promise you if the questions are worded right, I'm promising you it'll work. You know, and it's like in people who don't have the experience, maybe that's it. People don't have enough experience with it and they just say, no, this isn't going to do it. You know, but yet, what else has to change? So I think it is like a stability factor, maybe not static, but a stability factor, you know.
And I'm thinking about the 1953 hurricane that was in a tornado that was in Waco. I wasn't here at the time, but I've heard a lot of stories about it. And the fact that the Alico building, which is a 22-story building and the tallest building in Waco still to this day, anyway, it literally moved. Well, it was an appreciable amount that it literally, I had a friend that was on the top story whenever the tornado came, and they had a conference table up there, big, heavy, and it literally slid over to the other side of the room, literally.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a lot of leaning to it, but it began to come back up and it stabilized. And it is still stable today, and they did not have to do a lot of, things to it to keep its stability.
Interesting.
Wow.
So there is something within us that can keep us in that stable zone.
Yeah.
That we can lean and bend, but not break.
Yeah.
But
We
then
would
what
be a
is
resilient
the
person.
point? What is the point where it's like, nope, okay, that's too much now.
Yeah.
Nope, you can't do another thing.
Yeah.
You know,
And maybe those points is different from each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Just like our fingerprints are different for each one of us.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
they're
definitely.
more resilient than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. To either condemn us or because, and again, it's going to go back to a large degree about what we have received.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Whether it's information, whether it is experience, whether it is nutrition, whether it is muscle, whatever we've received, then we're in the position to be able to live with and also to give.
Yeah. Listen, you guys, I'm going to have to go.
Yeah, well, we're out of our time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to sign off on the recording. Thanks everybody for joining today. And for those of you who are viewing this afterwards, we appreciate your continuing to support us, and we'll see you next week.